Welcome to the Her Vibe is Pretty podcast, where you'll be guided on how to step up into your evolved woman,
design your dream life, and start living it. Let's get vibey. Hello, welcome to this week's episode of Her Vibe is Pretty. So you just have Mary here this week. I am so excited. I've been waiting to record this episode and wanting to really record this episode, sharing my birth story. And I apologize that it has taken me this long to get to it, but we are here. It's happening. And I feel really good. I have my Kleenex handy because I'm sure I will get emotional at some point during this, because these days I get emotional like every single day, it feels like. I was emotional before getting pregnant and becoming a mom, and I feel like this has just amplified it like times 1,000, but in a really, really good and powerful way. So just to give you guys a little idea of how I plan on going through this, I'm definitely going to share in as much detail as possible my experience, my story, how things kind of played out. I loved before going through labor. I loved hearing other people's birth stories. So I'm going to be a completely open book here in this episode and share as many details as I can remember, as well as answer some questions that you guys shared with us on Instagram. So I want to get started before like the end of the third trimester. So before labor started, and I got some questions about managing like pre-labor nerves and anxiety. And if you go back and listen to my pregnancy episode, I share some of the things that really helped me, but I'll quickly run through some of those right now. So I read 2 really great books. I highly recommend. Like, I was terrified to give birth. And I will say, like, once I became pregnant, I don't know if it was the hormones or what, but I started to feel a lot less afraid about the whole process and really learned to trust my body and trust that my body knows what to do. So I don't know if like the hormones had something to do with this, but I used to be terrified of labor and delivery. Like, I've seen the movies, they look terrifying, like no thank you. But once I was actually in it, like once I was pregnant, it's like, well, this baby's coming out one way or another. I felt a lot more at ease about it just naturally. So I kind of blame that on like the hormones. But there are 2 books that I read that really, really helped me were Mindful Birthing and Ina May's Guide to Childbirth. So those were 2 books. Highly recommend. I read the Ina May one for my yoga training, and it has nothing to do with yoga. Like, it's all about childbirth and like trusting our bodies and loving our bodies and like knowing that our bodies know what to do. And it's all about home births, which, just sneak peek, I did not have a home birth. So you don't need to have a home birth to like read that and get a lot of value out of it. The mindfulness one, mindful birthing, is so powerful about just being present in the moment and how to like manage all those crazy thoughts and feelings and emotions that come up around delivering a baby, because it's like a huge freaking deal. So those 2 things helped me a lot in the beginning. Another question you guys asked is if I did a hypnobirthing course. So on Instagram, this company called Christian Hypnobirthing reached out to me, and they gave me a free subscription to their app. And so I listened to some of the meditations on there pretty regularly throughout my pregnancy, and I loved them. And again, highly recommend them. I will say they're not too religious. So even if you don't really identify with a certain religion, I found it still very, very helpful. I was raised Christian, Catholic, so it all felt very aligning to me. But I highly recommend that app if you're interested. I didn't take any hypnobirthing courses, but if that's something that you're interested in, again, highly recommend. I feel like when you learn to like turn inward and breathe and trust yourself going into this situation, it's going to go a lot smoother, even if there are bumps and crazy things along the way, if that makes sense, because you really can't control your birthing experience. And so that kind of takes me into one of the next questions, which was, what was my birthing plan and like what changes did I have to make? So I had a very loose idea of how I wanted my birth to go. And I purposely did not want to get too attached to a certain outcome because you have no control. You can do all the right things and you can still have a bunch of complications come up during your delivery that you had no control over. So I really tried hard not to stress and get too attached to a certain outcome. My goal was to have a healthy baby, and I did whatever I needed to do to make sure that that happened. And I made that very clear to my doctor as well. However, I did have somewhat of a birth plan. So because I had gestational diabetes, my diabetes doctors were pushing to induce early. And because, quote unquote, that's just what you do. And so I didn't really like that. I didn't really align with that. Now, if we got to a point where the baby was in distress or the baby, for medical reasons, like the baby would be in harm if we didn't induce early, that's a different scenario. But I was able to manage everything with diet and exercise at that point. The baby was measuring fine, the heart rate and everything was healthy. So to me, there was no reason to induce. I did not want to induce labor if I didn't have to. And again, one thing I want to say too is this is my experience. This is my story. There are so many different opinions. There are so many different ways that these things can play out. And this is just my experience. This doesn't mean that any other way is right or wrong or better or worse or anything like that. So I just want to make that clear from the beginning. But I didn't want to be induced if I didn't have to for any medical reason. So I kind of had to put my foot down with my doctors, which was kind of annoying. But again, that goes back to I was really glad I read that book by Ina May, because that really empowered me to have these conversations with my doctor and feel very confident speaking about certain things and having educated conversations. So again, was such a good book. I just recommend it to every pregnant person I talk to. So I didn't want to be induced if I didn't have to be. And so my ideal birth plan was, I go into labor naturally. So I start to feel contractions. I stay at home for as long as possible. And then once I get to that point where, the contractions fall at that certain timing, which ask your doctor, I don't remember what that timing was off the top of my head. But once you reach that point, going into the hospital, finishing labor there, going as long as I can without any pain meds. And then if I get to a point where I want pain meds, I was totally open to getting them and then finishing it out and having a vaginal delivery. So that was my plan, if you will. And again, I tried so hard not to get too attached to any specific outcome, because if you have ever been through labor before, you know that anything can happen. So that was kind of my plan going in. And I'm very grateful because my plan went pretty much to that plan. And sometimes that happens and sometimes it doesn't. And so I'm grateful for the way that things played out. I had a healthy baby at the end of it all, and everyone was happy and healthy. So that's what really, really mattered to me. So that was my plan going into it. Okay. So now one other question I want to touch on too is someone asked if COVID was an issue. COVID. Are you guys sick of talking about COVID yet? COVID was a little bit of an issue. I tried, just the fact that I was pregnant, getting sick in any way is not good, just because, your body's already building and growing a little baby inside. So you don't want to add anything that could harm that. So any sickness, you want to be mindful of. So I was mindful during pregnancy, never got COVID while I was pregnant. And then the rules at the hospital were we could only have one person in the room with us. So Jake was able to be there for everything. Thank goodness. He had to wear a mask. I had to wear a mask sometimes, but they let me take it off during labor. Could you imagine having to wear a mask during labor? So I didn't have to wear it during labor, but then after, when you're in the recovery room, they had us wear masks when people were in the room. But honestly, most of the nurses didn't care because I didn't have mine on very much. So it really, really wasn't that big of an issue, but I've heard crazy stories where no one's allowed in the delivery room. And I would be so heartbroken if I had to experience that all by myself, just because it's such an intense experience. And then after that, we were allowed to have an extra visitor. So then my mom was able to come in, but you can only have one extra visitor at a time and only one. So that I think has changed now. But like my mom, so like my mom and dad couldn't come together. My dad just ended up seeing the baby once we went home, and my sister and like whatnot, the rest of our family. Okay, so birth story. So I woke up around midnight having to pee. So when you're pregnant, you wake up and pee so many times during the night. It's very, very annoying. That's one thing I certainly don't miss about being pregnant. But I woke up because I had to pee and I got out of bed. And as I was like running to the bathroom, I like felt myself start to pee. I was like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. So I like run into the bathroom and I pee. And I was like, I can't believe I just did that. And I was like, could that be my water breaking? And I was like, no, there like wasn't very much. And I probably am just a pregnant person that like peed themselves. Like, how embarrassing, but also probably will be a funny story at some point. So I clean myself up. I go back in bed. I lay down. And as I lay down, I can feel myself peeing again. And that was when I was like, oh my gosh, I wonder if my water is breaking. So this time I grab my phone, I go to the bathroom, I pee again, I clean myself up, and I call the doctor and just like let them know, like, hey, I am not sure if my water broke or if I am peeing myself. Like, I think I was like 39 weeks pregnant. She was about a little over a week early. So, um, I was like, I think my water might have broke, but it might just be pee. Like, I don't know. How do you tell? And so she like told me the things to watch for. And so I was like watching that. And again, I like clean myself up. I am like lay a towel down in bed. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. Jake is still asleep, but I kind of like whispered to him, I'm like, I think my water might have broke, but stay in bed. Don't wake up. Like, I'm calling the doctor just to confirm because I didn't have any contractions. And so as I'm like Googling water breaking, like it's pretty rare, which I did not know this. It's pretty rare for a woman's water to break. About 10% of women's water break on their own. And usually it's due to contractions. So because I wasn't having any contractions, and it wasn't a ton, like it wasn't like in the movies where you're like, gush, like water everywhere in the grocery store, right? Like it wasn't like that at all. Like I said, it felt like I was peeing my pants. So I I feel that I wake Jake up or kind of wake him up. I'm like, stay in bed. I'm calling the doctor. And I get back in bed and it happens again. And that's when I'm like, yeah, I don't think I'm peeing my pants. Like I couldn't hold it in, whatever. So I go to the bathroom and eventually like I clean myself up again. I lay back down. I'm like waiting now for the doctor to call me back. And I think it takes like about an hour ish for them to call me back. And when I talk to the doctor, she's like, everything you're telling me sounds like your water's breaking, but when you get here, we'll test it to make sure. And, pack your bags, like get everything to go because if your water did break, like you will not leave the hospital without a baby. I'm like, okay, that's crazy. It's freaking happening. So I get up next to Jake's head. I go, it's happening. We're going to the hospital. Like, we're going to need you to get up. So we get up at this point. I also asked the doctor because I was like, can I take a shower? um you know is that okay? Do I need to get there right away? Because one of the risks with your water breaking on its own is that if you just like don't do anything forever, like you can potentially get an infection, like the baby, because now like their little seal or bag or whatever is like broken. So we do just like crazy fire drill around the house, like because our bags were not completely packed. Like we had a couple things packed, but like you need a lot of the things that you use every day. So we're like packing the bags and we packed a ton of healthy snacks. People were like, oh yeah, pack lots of healthy snacks for the hospital. Like sometimes the food's good, sometimes it isn't. Um, and got our clothes. I wore like the comfiest sweats ever. And I took like the nicest shower. That was like one of my favorite things. And like one of the things I thought I might do during labor and delivery is like get into like they have like little whirlpools or like hot shower. Like I loved taking hot showers when I was pregnant. So I took like a super nice hot shower, just like rubbing and holding my belly, like, oh my gosh, this is like, I'm gonna miss being pregnant so much. And I took some pictures because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the last time I'm gonna have this big bump. And I loved it. So let's see, get everything packed. We packed lots of healthy snacks. And I just really packed like the basics for the hospital, like comfy clothes and like an outfit for the baby. Like I didn't go extreme and get anything crazy. Um, and then Jake just packed like for an overnight, and we start to get into the car and we're on our way to the hospital, and that was when I started to feel contractions. So I was kind of surprised. And one thing the doctor said too, she was like, if you take a shower, she's like, yeah, totally fine, take a shower, but just be careful because usually that'll relax the body, which will like speed up your contractions. So even if you're not feeling them now, you might feel them at the end of your shower, so just know that. And I think I started to feel them a little, but they were super mild. When I got in the car and we were driving to the hospital, like that's when I started to really feel them. And I don't know if it was the way that she was positioned in my body, but I felt them like in my low back. And this is kind of gross, but I told you guys I'll share all the details. Like how I would describe the pain at this point is like having to fart or poop like really bad, but not being able to. Like it was like a crampy feeling, and I felt it like kind of low and then in my low back. And that might have been the way that she was positioned because it was not a sharp pain. It was more of like a crampy, like, I don't know, like poop pain, like needed to get something out, obviously a baby, but didn't know how to do it. So that's how I would describe the pain. Cause that's one thing I was thinking. I was like, how would I describe this to someone who's not going through it? And so, but it was again at this point very mild. I could like talk through my contractions, I could breathe just fine. And that was my biggest thing, is like focusing on my breath. Like that was the thing I heard from so many different places and read in all these books, like breathe through each one, breath by breath. Like you can do this, relax your body, let your body get into this like relaxed state so it can do what it needs to do to get this baby out. So that was like the mentality. I kept trying to like relax and be calm and breathe deep and slow and like allow things to just like let the waves of those contractions just like flow over me, was like the mindset that I had. So felt the contractions on the way to the hospital. And when we got there, I walked in. I could totally walk just fine and was like, hello, I think I'm in labor. You know, this is my due date, whatever. They got me checked in. And that was when they did like the test to verify if it was like the fluid, and it was. So my water for sure broke. So glad, because I thought that how embarrassing if I like go to the hospital and they're like, sorry ma'am, you just peed your pants, go back home. So really really happy about that. And they like strap you up to these like little monitors to test like your contractions. One of them like tracks your contractions, so you can like watch them like on the screen, which is kind of cool. And then another one like tracks the baby's heart rate, I believe, just to make sure the baby doesn't like go into distress, because again, that's when crazy things can happen. So got all checked out, everything is looking good. They like draw blood, they just check all of your vitals. Everything was going pretty smooth. The contractions were definitely starting to get more intense, and I experienced a lot of nausea. Like I was throwing up kind of a lot, which is really gross, and a lot of it was dry heaving because after you like get everything out, like everything is out. So I would get like nauseous from the contractions, and I don't know if that's normal or not. I mean, they didn't seem too surprised by it, but that was my experience. And so I'd get like different waves of nausea, which kind of sucked. And then they did start getting more intense as my body started dilating more and more. And they got to the point where they're like, all right, we're going to take you up to the delivery room. So they wheel me all the way up to this other room. And at this point, again, I'm just breathing through each contraction. And Jake, oh, was such a good sport. He was like, I'm just so grateful he was there. I won't lie. I was a little nervous. Like, is he gonna be, a good support during this? Like, I don't know. Neither of us have done this before. It's kind of crazy. Like, is he gonna say the right things? Is he gonna be comforting? And he did such a good job. And so during my contractions, he would rub my back. I started to get to the point where I like could talk, but they're constantly like asking you questions. And I remember just being like, pause for a moment. Like, I just need to ride this contraction and then I'll answer the question that you're asking me. So it wasn't that I couldn't talk through them. It was just, I didn't want to. I kind of wanted to just focus on breathing and getting through it until they go away. And so everything is just progressing like pretty quickly, not like crazy quick, but like we were making progress like the whole way. So I get up to the delivery room, and you guys, I was so freaking grateful because I get there and I find out that my doctor was the doctor on call. So the office that I go to, there are many, many doctors, and there's a very good chance that the one that you see regularly like isn't going to be there when you deliver. And I knew that going into it, and it just is what it is. I was so freaking glad that my doctor was actually going to be the doctor to deliver because she was amazing. I loved her. She was like so supportive of me and my plan. And when I told her about how the diabetes doctors were like, we need to induce you, we need to induce you, she was like, listen, they can give us recommendations, but you and I are the ones that are going to make the actual decision. And we can take their advice or not take their advice. Like it's up to us. And I loved that because I felt really seen. I felt really heard. I felt really understood that she knew what I wanted. And like I said, I told her, I was like, I'm not against these things if they're needed, but at this point they weren't needed. So happy that my actual doctor was able to be there for everything. So at this point though, I was just like with the nurses, and the nurses were incredible too. Like, oh, labor and delivery nurses, God bless you. You are angels on earth. Like, they're so, so sweet and supportive and wonderful and like your biggest cheerleaders. So had really excellent people there supporting me and supporting us during this crazy delivery experience. And so we get up to the delivery room, and I'm probably at this point dilated to like a 4 or a 5. And this was also kind of around the time when the shift changed. So this was when like the nurse that was going to be there for like the rest of it was getting on shift, and then my doctor was taking over. So at this point, I'm still breathing through the contractions, but I like can't talk during them. So every time they come, I just remember like gripping the edge of the bed and just breathing as deep as I could. And they brought the epidural team in. So they give an introduction to everyone just to like answer any questions you have, like, just to be there to say like, hello, this is an option that you have. And so we met them, we asked them questions because, you always hear like, the story of, oh, I wanted to get an epidural, like it got too intense and they were like, it's too late, you can't get one. And so we were like, all right, what are the limits here? And they were like, you can get one as long as you're able to sit still enough for us to administer it to you. So you have to be able to sit still for however many minutes it takes to do the epidural. And she's like, so we can do it right up until the end, but a lot of times at the end you're like, moving or shaking or whatever, and you're not able to. So I was like, all right, cool. Good to know. Thank you. I was like, I'm good right now. I'm not against it. I'll let you know. Like, how long does it take to get you back here? And they're like, it won't take long to get us back here. Like, if you need us. I'm like, okay, cool. So I go a little bit longer, and like time is kind of flying by. Like, this is probably around 6-ish in the morning. So I went into labor around midnight, got to the hospital around like 1:32 in the morning. And this is probably around 6 in the morning. I'm roughly guessing that. I just remember like an hour would go by and I'd be like, how the heck did an hour go by? It's so weird. Like, you're so in the moment and like going bit by bit, riding contraction after contraction, like breath by breath. Like, you are just in the moment, and there's so many questions and everything. These are all like new sensations in your body. And it just was this big present whirlwind. Like, that's the only way I can put into words like what this time warp I felt like I was in. It was wild. So around 6 in the morning, that was when I hit a point where I couldn't breathe through the contractions anymore. And that was when I was like, okay, it's probably only going to get a lot harder from here. I think I was dilated to about a 6 at this point, if I had to guess or remember. I can't fully remember. Um, but I want to say I was dilated to about a 6 or maybe a 7. Like we were starting to get there. We were starting to get close. For those of you that don't know, you need to be dilated to a 10. That's when you're like getting ready to deliver this baby. So I was at like a 6, maybe a 7-ish around this point, and I had a couple contractions. I had like 2 or 3 of them that I like the air just like got sucked out of my lungs. I could not take a breath. And I just remember thinking like, just inhale and exhale. You got this. Inhale, exhale, you got this. And I couldn't. And that was when I was like, all right, call the epidural team in. So they came in, they had me sit on the edge of the bed. And well, first they gave me an IV before that, which I don't know about you guys, but that freaking hurt. Like I did not like getting the IV in my arm. That freaking hurt, but you had to get the IV to get the epidural. So they gave me the IV. The epidural team came in. So I'm sitting on the edge of the bed. I kind of like hunched over, and Jake was like, I wish I would have recorded this. He said that this guy that came in, he like wheels his little cart in, and he's like popping syringes and like popping different bottles and like filling syringes and like getting everything all set up. She was like, he looked like so fast. He was like, I couldn't believe how fast this guy was moving to like get all these things. And he's just like, all right, you're going to feel a little pinch. And I felt like the teeny tiniest, like little pinch in my back. And he was like, all right, that's it. And then he like did this and this and that. Like, I don't know. He just did all these different things. And Jake was like in awe of this guy. So he got it done. I mean, it felt like a minute or two. And then immediately I just felt my body just soften and relax. It felt so freaking good. And again, this is a decision I made. Whether you get meds during labor and delivery, whether you don't, there's no right or wrong. For me, I am so glad I made that decision to get it, because I feel like it really let me enjoy the experience. And I felt like just relief. Like it felt like so much pressure was building and building and building in my body to that point that I couldn't breathe, where getting that epidural just let me like take that really deep breath again. So it was a really good decision for me, and I had a very good experience with it. So I get the epidural. I'm able to somewhat like relax at this point. I can still feel the contractions, but the major discomfort of them is gone. And it really was not bad at all. So got that. I also want to add, I'm a huge freaking baby, you guys. Like I hate getting shots. I hate, like I had to poke my finger when I had diabetes to test my blood. I freaking hated it every single time. It never got easier. Like, ooh, I get like the shivers. I'm a huge baby. So like for me, the epidural did not hurt at all. And I couldn't believe that. And after that, like I just felt really good, dare I say. Like I felt good after I got the epidural, and could still feel like it was still uncomfortable at the moments the contractions were coming. And I loved that it wasn't enough that I couldn't feel them, because I could feel them. But it helped a ton. So I have that. I'm kind of resting a little bit, because what's coming up next is the pushing. So they did a bunch of different pushing techniques with me. I pushed for about 2.5 hours, which I think is kind of a long time-ish to push. I read things online about how like you shouldn't be pushing that much, that like forces the baby, that you should like, there are like no push methods. And so we didn't do that, but I mean, definitely look into it and, you know, again, make those decisions for yourself. But I ended up pushing for about 2.5 hours. Again, it honestly went by in such a flash. And Jake like helped with some of it. So he kind of stayed up by my head, which I was totally okay with. I also did not get a mirror. So some people are like, get the mirror, like it helps motivate you to like watch everything that's happening. But I was like, no, thank you. I don't need that. Don't want that. Maybe I'll do it for a future pregnancy, but for this one, nope, didn't want the mirror. So I didn't get the mirror. Jake stayed up by my head for most of it. He was so helpful. So I'm trying to even remember what we did. We'd like we'd like push down, and then I'd like take a breath, and then I'd push again. And I did that like 3 or 4 times during the contractions, and then I'd rest during the other ones. And then when it would come up again, another contraction, you'd push and then push and push. And they had like a whole way of doing it. Like the nurses and the doctor were so helpful. And also, I was still throwing up during all of this, which is gross, but they were like, you like the heaving was kind of like helping the process along, I guess. So I guess silver lining of getting sick during your labor and delivery. But um got through all of that. And then the next thing I remember is she's like, oh, this is where I'm gonna get emotional. I just remember her saying, we're gonna do 2 more pushes and then your baby's gonna come. Let me take a breath, you guys. So I just remember pushing with all of my might, and she's like, yes, here we go. She's coming. She goes, 1 more push. That's all you need to do. And I took a big breath and I pushed with all of my might, and she came right out. And it's the weirdest feeling when the baby comes out of your body. I was really, really nervous about that because you hear about the ring of fire and like it's like when they're crowning. I mean, again, like, do you guys remember the movie Knocked Up? Like, I always think of Knocked Up. And I remember being really scared that that was going to be the part. And again, it might have been, but my epidural worked very, very well. I did not feel any extra pain during that actual delivery when the baby came out. In fact, it felt kind of really interesting and cool because it kind of was like pressure, pressure, pressure. And then all of a sudden the baby like shoots out and it's like, and then it's like done. Like your body stops contracting. You just take this deep breath. And like from this point on, it was just like such a freaking blur. I'm going to get emotional again because she like handed me this little tiny baby. And I just remember crying, and I just remember saying like, we did it, we did it, we did it, because we're so focused on ourselves during labor delivery, like what's going to happen to me, and we forget that like this is a crazy experience for this little tiny baby too, and like we're working together to get this baby out of our body. And so it was just this incredible experience of finally getting to hold this teeny precious little baby that you've been growing and connecting with for 9 months and holding them in your arms. It was, we did it. Like, that's what I just kept saying. We did it. We did it. I love you. You're here. Baby was very, very healthy. They sucked all of the things like out of her nose and out of her mouth and throat, and she was breathing and crying. And then all of a sudden she's on my chest, and they like helped me get her in the position. And so our hospital does this thing called the golden hour. And that's where like for that first hour, the baby, you do skin to skin with your baby. And we also did delayed cord cutting. So they like left the cord intact for a little while, and then they eventually like cut it. Again, this was all such a blur to me. But I was holding the baby. They got me in the position. She started nursing. Like she just knew how to do that. Like it was crazy. And I know like that's not always the case with people they're breastfeeding. Oh, I could do a whole episode on that. Like breastfeeding is a whole thing on its own, but it started happening and she did it. And so we snuggled together, and it was just this incredible experience of holding this teeny tiny thing that's been inside of you for so long. Oh, you guys, it was insane. It was so intense and so beautiful. And like, I can't even put it into words. Like, you're not the same person you are after you deliver a baby. Like, you are changed from now on in the most beautiful way ever. So I'm holding the baby, we're snuggling, she's doing very well. And after that, they just do all of their regular like checks and things and make sure she's okay. They weigh her, they take footprints, they um unfortunately, they had to like test her blood to make sure she didn't have any blood sugar issues since I had the diabetes, but she passed all of those. Um and then yeah, they take you into the recovery room and that's where we stayed. So we stayed in the hospital for 2 nights. Oh my gosh, I can't even remember. 2 or 3 nights. Um we wanted to stay an extra day to get more help from the breastfeeding consultant just to really lock that in before we left because that's like a whole skill on its own and I won't go into too much detail there. Um but we stayed there for a little while, which was, good. Everything went great. Got to meet her pediatrician. My doctor came in and checked on us, like someone from the office. Everything was looking good. They do this like weird belly massage. Oh, that's another whole thing. So then you have to like deliver the placenta, which again with the epidural like didn't really feel like much. It was kind of the same as the baby. It just like smaller and squishier. I don't know. But it just like comes out again and then they do these like tummy massages which don't feel very good after just to make sure that like everything's in the right place. I don't know. But yeah, I mean that was pretty much it. We took the baby home a couple days later and got to meet, the close family. So one thing that was really really helpful was my mom. Two things that were really helpful was that so first off, I actually can't believe I didn't show this in the beginning. So I always joke that my sister put me into labor because the day before she came over and she was like, I'm going to come over. We are going to meal prep like crazy and freeze a ton of meals for postpartum so that you like don't have to worry about it dealing with making dinner. You just have to pop it in the oven. So her and I, the day before I went into labor, I can't believe I didn't show this in the beginning. Went to like all the grocery stores, got all this food. I was on my feet all day, like chopping and prepping and cooking all these meals. I made so much food. It was honestly one of the best decisions I ever could have made. Was to have all this because yeah, postpartum cooking dinner is like the last thing you want to do. So I was so like, and then she was supposed to stay that night, but we finished early. So we were like, you're fine. Like you can just, go back home. And she was like, okay. So she ended up leaving. And that was the night that I went into labor. So can't believe that I didn't start with that because I joked that she like put me into labor because I was like up on my feet all day that day before. But the other thing that was really, really helpful postpartum, so I had all this food already prepped and made, which was amazing, was that my mom came and stayed with us for 2 weeks to help with the baby, to help with things around the house. Like those, first several weeks after you give birth, like all you do is breastfeed. You're feeding every 1 to 2 hours, and you you're feeding every 1 to 2 hours. Um, and you're just tired. I mean, your body feels like it just went through a freaking like car accident or something. Like your whole body is sore and tired. You're recovering, you're bleeding, like you're wearing basically a diaper. Um, the softest, biggest clothes possible. Like, so yeah, it was so helpful to have my mom there. I'll touch on like all of this stuff. I want to answer a couple questions. I got so many questions. About bouncing back. And I kind of want to end on that. And then I'll talk more in the next episode at some point about postpartum recovery and things for that. But yeah, took home a happy baby, healthy baby. It was the most precious thing ever. My heart could just explode. Like becoming a mom has been hands down the greatest thing I've ever done. And like, I thought I knew what love was. And having Ava, becoming a mother, has shown me new depths of love that I did not even know existed. So it has been the coolest, greatest experience of my life. That doesn't mean there haven't been hard moments or challenging moments. Like there certainly have, but it is hands down the greatest thing I've ever done. So, bouncing back. I got so many questions about bouncing back. So, I'll just kind of read them to you and then I'll just share my thoughts, my experience, my opinions on this. People often say bounced back bodies aren't real. How did you do it? Is it even necessary? Bouncing back, how to minimize problems, what can we do pre-pregnancy? Are there significant changes your body um, that are there significant changes to your body that haven't bounced back yet? And what postpartum yoga do you recommend? So there's no doubt a lot of pressure from society to like bounce back. Like you hear this so much, and I just feel like the fact that I got so many questions on this just shows like it's something that so many women are very concerned about. And I won't lie, like before getting pregnant, I felt the same way. Like I felt that was like kind of a reason I didn't want to get pregnant is I was like I don't want to like ruin my body and I don't want to like gain weight and not be able to lose it and like all these very negative and in my opinion now unhealthy thoughts. And then once I got pregnant, I had this big shift of like, my body is incredible. My body is building and creating a human. Like, I was made to do this. Like, how cool is my body that it's growing and nurturing this teeny little baby, this new life? I had this new love and respect and confidence in my body exactly as it was. Like I was freaking made for this. So having that mentality through pregnancy, I literally didn't give a shit. I did not care about bouncing back. It was the least of my concerns. When I had the baby, all I focused on was taking care of myself, asking for help when I needed it, which I needed it a lot, giving myself so much space to rest and relax and heal. That was my only focus after having the baby. But yeah, like our bodies are incredible and part of my genetics, my body, healed. I didn't even pay attention to the time. I don't have a scale, so I never weighed myself. But I was just so proud of my body for going through labor and delivery, growing this baby, and creating new life. And I really focused on loving my body, being grateful for what it did, and knowing that my body's probably not going to be the same after. And that's okay because I'm not the same person I was before, and my body isn't either. So, some of the things I personally felt different after that haven't quote unquote bounced back. I think my hips are just wider. I think during delivery, like I think my pelvis is just like wider set, which I'm just embracing and I love it and it is what it is. I also lost a ton of strength and flexibility. I didn't towards the end of my pregnancy, I had a lot of hip and pelvic pain. Um so I was not working out regularly. Towards the end, and that's okay. Again, like give yourself grace. Do not force yourself to do anything, in my opinion, that can cause more harm than good. During pregnancy and postpartum, like give your body space to rest and relax. But I did lose a lot of flexibility and a lot of strength, which at this point, so now I'm like 6, 7 months into my postpartum journey. And I'm just kind of looking at it as a new challenge. Like now I have something to work towards and work on, and it feels good. I've been getting on my mat just recently, more than before, and it feels amazing. So I've really, really enjoyed that. But mamas, like this is my message to you. Your body is amazing. Your body grew new life, and it's your job to love and nourish and take care of that body. So give yourself time, give yourself space, take off any pressure you have of like, I need to bounce back, because that is not important. What is important is allowing yourself to heal, allowing yourself to recover, and giving yourself that love and grace. Like, hold that baby in your arms, snuggle and kiss that teeny tiny new life, and just be so grateful that you are the reason that that baby is there. So that is kind of my opinion and my take on like bouncing back. Like, take that freaking pressure off of yourself. It is so unnecessary. It is so unneeded. Focus instead on just taking care of you physically and mentally. Um, the other thing I will say, one question I got is like, what things can you do to minimize problems and what can you do pre pregnancy? The one thing I'll say here, and it's the exact same advice: take care of yourself. Take care of yourself mentally and take care of yourself physically. Do that before you even get pregnant. Do that while you are pregnant and do that during your postpartum experience, because our body and mind goes through so freaking much. Take care of yourself. That is going to minimize any problems or complications the best it can, because mentally, things are probably going to come up. You're going to get a curveball at some point in one way or another. And when you're mentally taking care of yourself, you are going to be able to ride those waves a lot smoother. You're going to be able to keep that stress a lot lower, which is good for you, which is good for baby. When you're sleeping well, when you're moving your body in ways that feel good for you, when you're eating very healthy and nourishing foods, you are doing all the things to put yourself in a good situation to have and bring new life into this world. So, like I said, that doesn't mean that, if you take care of yourself, like nothing bad's going to happen or no complications are going to come up, or like I said, you're not going to get this curveball. Like, you probably will. It happens all the time. Crazy things happen all the time. Like, for me, a curveball was like getting gestational diabetes. Like, I wasn't happy about that at all, but it was the situation I was in. And so it was like, all right, I'm going to do the very best I can to take care of myself during this and to take care of my baby. And it doesn't mean that I didn't have moments that I was upset and that I cried and I felt stressed, but I did everything I could in my power to reduce that so that I felt, as good as possible, because stress is not good for anybody involved. And then postpartum, the same. And I'll go into more detail on this in a later episode, but having a newborn, your whole life gets flipped upside down, like even more than I ever realized. And I want to apologize to all of my mama friends that had babies before I realized how much this freaking rocks your world. So I feel like I did not support them the way that I should have to be a good friend, but I didn't know. And now I do. So now I'm doing better going forward. But your whole world gets rocked. And so when you are able to come into that situation with love and gratitude and grace for yourself and for this baby and for your partner and for anyone else supporting you in this situation, it's all going to go a lot more smooth, even when things are very, very crazy and very, very rocky. So again, this all goes back to take care of yourself. Take care of yourself mentally, relax, do meditations, listen to some of those hypnobirthing, recordings. They are so, so helpful to get you in a really good mind state. Take care of your body, move in ways that feel good, eat nourishing foods, get lots of sleep, reduce stress as much as possible. Maybe that means getting massages. Maybe that means watching funny movies or funny videos. Take care of yourself, and your body and your mind will take care of you, is kind of my mentality there. So I know that helped me, quote unquote, bounce back. I hate even saying that. I can't believe I just said that, but it helped me stay aligned. How about this? With my greatest version of myself in that moment. And you can do it. You can do it too. And I'm proud of you for doing it and for listening to this and in really taking care of yourself. As far as postpartum yoga, again, do not rush this, is my first piece of my opinion on this. Some people feel really good very soon to get back at it and move their bodies. I was not that person. I rested for a long time. I rested for a long, long time, several months. Moving didn't sound good, didn't feel good. I didn't want to do it, so I didn't do it. And guess what? That's okay. Totally okay. honor yourself, give yourself grace. When I did start doing yoga again, it felt really freaking good. And so I created a 7-day postpartum yoga series that I have on the Yoga Plus app. So if anyone is looking for like guided postnatal classes, highly recommend doing that series. I just kind of touch on different parts of the body that I know for me felt very achy when I was a new mom. And all of those classes are like around 10 minutes. A couple of them are a little bit longer, a couple of them are a little bit shorter because you like don't have a lot of time to just like kick back and do yoga. So yeah, that was something that I loved creating and I loved having. So there are 7 classes on there that you guys can practice along with. So yeah, I think I'm going to wrap up this episode because I think it's almost an hour. So thank you guys so much for listening to my birth story. Thank you for being there with me when I got a little bit emotional. I will definitely create another episode at some point about postpartum experience as well as becoming a mom and parenthood. It's been so amazing, and I can't wait to get upstairs and hang out with my little peanut Ava. I just love her so much. Like, again, new depths of love, you guys. So thank you so much for listening. You guys know the drill. Follow us on Instagram. Join our Facebook page, Her Vibe is Pretty podcast. If you are enjoying this episode or if you are enjoying other episodes, please leave us a rating and review in Apple Podcasts. You guys don't even understand, that is so helpful for us to be seen in the podcast world and to build some traction there to get more and more people listening. So please rate and review. And as always, you can always message us. I love hearing from you guys. Your messages literally light me up, and it just reminds me like what an incredible community we have here. So love you so much. Thank you for being here, and I will catch you next week on Her Vibe is Pretty. Bye.